Hello students, today's topic is on National Commission for Minorities. In these lectures, I shall briefly highlight on the powers, roles and functions of the National Commission for Minority. And National Commission for Minority is one of the important commissions established under an Act of Parliament to preserve, promote and protect the rights and safeguards of the minority communities in India. Introduction. Establishment of National Commission for Minorities is rooted in the constitutional promises and rights guarantee for minority communities. Constitution refers to religious and linguistic minorities, though the term minority is defined nowhere in the Constitution. We can recall here that Constitution, while providing for a liberal democratic polity, also declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular and democratic republic. In addition to it, it also promises to secure to Indian citizens justice, social, economic and political. Informed by such promises and socio-economic and political realities of India, the Constitution of India contains several safeguards in the form of rights for religious and linguistic minorities and other weaker sections. These safeguards are spread in the chapters on fundamental rights, directive principle of state policy, 5th and 6th schedule to the Constitution of India. Provisions to safeguard the social, educational and economic interests of the minorities are also contained in the Constitution. The plural social order of India, historical experience of communalism, unequal development and fear of non-Hindu religious groups about the hegemony of Hindu majority necessitated inclusion of specific provisions for safeguarding socio-cultural, religious and linguistic identity of minorities in the Constitution. Moreover, these minorities were regarded as historically deprived sections. Therefore, state affirmative actions were required to bring them in the mainstream. The idea of an inclusive nation and non-discriminatory social order demand special protection of these groups. Establishment of National Commission for Minorities. It is in line with the constitutional commitment to protect and safeguard the rights and interests of minorities that the Government of India, via an executive resolution, set up the first Minorities Commission in 1978. The resolution clearly explained the reasons for the establishment of the Minorities Commission in the following words. Despite the safeguards provided in the Constitution and the laws in force, there persists among minorities a feeling of inequality and discrimination. In order to preserve secular traditions and to promote national integration, the Government of India attaches the highest importance to the enforcement of the safeguards provided for the minorities and is of firm view that effective institutional arrangements are urgently required for the enforcement and implementation of all the safeguards provided for the minorities in the Constitution, in the central and state laws, and in the government policies and administrative schemes enunciated from time to time. Until 1992, the Commission had functioned under the guidance of 4 chairpersons. However, the need for providing a constitutional basis to the Commission was voiced early in the parliaments. For instance, members of Parliament had expressed their fear that without effective power, the Commission's role in safeguarding the interests of the minorities would be limited. Earlier in 1978 and 1990, there were attempts to give constitutional basis to the Commission, but without success. In 1998, the linguistic minorities were put outside the ambit of the Minority Commissions. On 4th May 1992, then Welfare Minister Sitaram Kesri introduced the National Commission for Minority Bills in the Lok Sabha. The defender of the bill, mostly belonging to Congress and non-BJP parties, offered broadly two reasons for conferring the Minorities Commission with a statutory status. They defended the bill on the ground of efficacy and principles of secularism. The bill was finally passed in May 1992 and came into effect in 1993. With the enactment of the National Commission for Minorities Act, the Minorities Commission became a statutory body and was renamed the National Commission for Minorities. The first statutory commission was constituted on 17th May 1993. The Act, however, does not define the term minority, but enables the central government to notify minorities for the purpose of the Act. Accordingly, the central government, via a gazette notification issued on 23rd October 1993 by Ministry of Welfare, Government of India, had notified 5 religious communities such as Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Zoroastrians or Parsis as minority communities. And in January 2014, central government under a notification has also recognized Jain's community as minority. As a result, there are now 6 minority communities in India. The political significance of the Act lies in the fact that it not only makes NCM, that is National Commission for Minority, a statutory commission, but also provides in details about the composition, power and functions of the commission. Now we shall briefly highlight on the composition of the commission. The commission is a multi-member body consisting of a chairperson, a vice chairpersons and 5 members. They are nominated by the central government from amongst the persons of eminence, ability and integrity. However, 5 members including the chairperson should be from amongst the minority communities. The chairpersons and members hold office for a period of 3 years. They can, however, relinquish their posts at any time by addressing their resignation to the central government. The chairpersons or a member can be removed from the office by the central government. Now, the functions of the Commission. As per Section 9, Clause 1 of the NCM Act 1992, the Commissions has been given the following function. And some of the important functions of the Commissions are to evaluate the progress of the development of minorities under the Union and states. Second important function is to monitor the working of the safeguards for minorities provided in the Constitution and in laws enacted by Parliament and the state legislature, and to make recommendations for the effective implementation of safeguards for the protection of the interests of minorities by the central government or the state government. Next important function is to look into specific complaints regarding deprivation of rights and safeguards of minorities and take up such matters with appropriate authorities. To cause studies to be undertaken into the problems arising out of any discrimination against minorities and recommends measures for their removal. To conduct studies, research and analysis on the issues relating to socio-economic and educational development of minorities. To suggest appropriate measures in respect of any minorities to be undertaken by the central government or the state government, and to make periodical or special reports to the central governments on any matters pertaining to minorities, and in particular the difficulties confronted by them, and to look into any other matter referred to it by the central government. Now, the powers of the Commission. While evaluating, monitoring any matters or inquiring into any complaint, the Commission has all the powers of a civil court trying a suit, and in particular in respect of the following matters: summoning and enforcing the attendance of any persons from any part of India and examining him on oath. Secondly, requiring the discovery and production of any documents and receiving evidence on affidavits, requisitioning any public record from any court or office, and issuing summons for the examination of witness and documents, and any other matters which may be prescribed by the central government. Report of the Commission. The Commission presents an annual report to the central government. It can also submit reports as and when it thinks necessary. The central government places all such reports before its House of Parliament along with a memorandum explaining the action taken on the recommendations made by the Commission. It should also contain the reason for the non-acceptance of any such recommendations. Role of the Commission. Since its inception in 1992, the NCM has been acting as storehouse of grievances and nodal monitoring agency for the promotion of minorities safeguards in India. Most of the complaints being received by NCM are related to police atrocities, service matters, minority educational institutions, and encroachments to religious properties. NCM in this regard has emerged as a nodal agency to protect and promote interests and rights of the minorities in India. NCM has been able to redress grievances of minorities in many cases. The detailed list of hearing and major decisions taken by NCM in such cases is provided in NCM's website. The National Commission for Minorities has been working on the sensitization of police towards minorities and their rights through various seminars and workshops. NCM's annual reports and its recommendations are serving as important inputs to government's policies concerning minority communities both at the union and state levels. It is crucial to mention that activities, mandate, and function of the NCM has been increased many folds and is likely to increase in near futures as union government takes up several welfare measures for minority communities. Since NCM is the nodal monitoring agency for the promotion and protection of safeguards provided for minorities in the Constitution of India. Along with giving statutory status to the minority commissions, Union government has been initiating several measures to ensure rights of minority groups. Prime Minister's 15-point program for minorities and appointment of a high-level committee called Sachar Committee are case in point. In addition, a separate ministry called Ministry of Minority Affairs has been created in 2006. Today, important departments or ministry of the union government such as Ministry of Social Welfare, Ministry of Minority Affairs, Ministry of Human Resource Development, etc. have been taking up measures to improve and promote educational, economic and social conditions of minorities in India. For instance, MHRD has initiated certain important steps to uplift the educational status of minorities, particularly that of Muslims. Among the significant measures mention may be met of constitution of a National Monitoring Committee on Minorities Education under the chairmanship of Honorable Minister of Human Resource Development, and a standing committee to address issues relating to educational empowerment of minorities. Various reports related to minority communities indicate the existence of multiple forms of discrimination against minority communities. In this aspect, findings of the Justice Rajendra Sachar Committee report and socio-economic status of minorities is apt to mention. A Prime Minister's high-level committee was constituted by the Government of India in March 2005 under the chairmanship of Justice Rajendra Sachar to prepare a report on the social, economic and educational status of the Muslim community of India. The committee submitted its report in November 2006. The committee found that while there is considerable variation in the conditions of Muslims across states, the community exhibits deficits and deprivation in practically all dimensions of development. In fact, by and large, Muslims ranked somewhat above SC, ST, but below Hindu OBCs, other minorities and Hindu general, mostly upper caste, in all indicators considered by the committee. Besides development deficit, there is widespread perception among Muslims that they are discriminated against and excluded. To conclude the lecture, we can say that if India is to ever become a strong and powerful nation within the Community of Nations, it is possible only when there is unity, cooperation and fraternal feelings among the citizens of India. Therefore, protection, promotion and respect of rights of weaker section of the society in general and minority communities in particular are essential conditions for bringing national integration and development. Unless democratic and secular values are able to percolate down to society at large, minority communities are likely to face discrimination of various kinds. In this context, the role and function of the National Commission for Minorities becomes very important. There is need to provide adequate power and functions to National Commission for Minority to make it an effective agency for the protection of minorities' rights and safeguards.